rebroadcast on the Culver YouTube channel. So, who wants to lead off?
Sure, I'll be the talker. He's the brains, I'm the words. So what Karen and I have been discussing, we were contacted by Baker Tilly. It has been a little bit over a week now, on a Friday. We were contacted about the possibility of a geo bond. One of the reasons that we were considering this is, as Baker Tilly explained to us, is our assessed value as a town has increased significantly to the tune of 17% in there, Karen, if I remember correctly. So we're 17% increase, and what's happening with greater frequency, although that's driving our property rates down, the tax rates. Thank you, because she will cut my tongue out. Property tax rates are decreasing at a steady level, but that gap is increasing about the unrealized that assessed versus what we can actually capture. And their recommendation was consideration of two things. The first one was a geo bond to capture some of that. They said that we could bond up to $1.8 million. That wasn't, well, we'll get to that. 1.8 million, or that we could do an appeal for the maximum
levy appeal.
And which would be a little bit lengthier and would probably only slow it down. Their 5-year trend suggests that we're going to keep that rate of assessed value is going to keep growing for us at a pretty consistent level for the next 5 years. We're trending at 5 years. They're confident that if we captured the geo bond at 1.2, for example, which was the amount that we suggested, if we capture those monies, even though that will bring us back, as Karen has pointed out, that will bring us back to 2023 rate. So we'll be at a 2023 rate.
I'm confused. I
Sure.
thought we were already at our maximum. Don't we?
Well, okay. So
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so there's two things. So the state sets the maximum levy, and it can only increase. They passed a bill last year that it can only increase 4% for the last year, this year, and next year. So is that so basically, because that is set, even though our property tax, our assessed value is going up, that's driving our tax rate down, because we can capture basically the same amount of money. So what we could do, because our assessed value has gone up, we could do an excess levy appeal to say, look, we have all this extra assessed value. Can we increase our tax levy, which is the amount of money that we collect at property tax?
Otherwise, does that money just go into the state right now?
No, it's not going, it's just not collected. That's all it is. So if we were to, basically with the general obligation bond, because there's a gap between our assessed value and what we could be, they're saying that we could institute a general obligation bond. This would increase the tax rate by about 5 cents per $100 of assessed value.
Okay.
Which, you know, this year, basically, I was able to calculate, and this is only for the town. I don't have any other tax rates. You have to remember there's 5 different entities that make up the whole tax rate for the county. So this is solely the town. I think the tax rate is going to be right around 0.57. So basically 57 cents per $100 of assessed value is what the property taxes, what people will be paying if we don't do anything. If we add this geo bond, that's going to add 5 cents to that rate.
So that 57 would become 62 cents.
62.4,
Yeah.
essentially. And then that will basically equal what the property tax rate was in 23. So
Okay.
it's not increasing it from, so basically people wouldn't see a change in the tax rate. But they're still going to pay more, but they were going to pay more anyway.
One of the things that Baker Tilly told us is that this year they do not see, and I don't think that I'm aware of, anybody else raising their levy. So the school's not raising, county's not raising. So if we do this year, it will have the minimum, because if the school were to raise and the county were to raise and we do this, they're going to see a greater tax bill. Right now, it's a neutral year where we could do this, and it's going to minimize the impact on the overall tax bill because no one else is raising. We raised this to 2023. Now, the problem with this is, and this is going to lead us right back to the conversation we had with them in the spring is that your assessed house value, the sale prices are driving you, right? Hence why we have this massive gap between what we can capture and the actual value. That excludes TIF, by the way. That's not counting the TIF. So this is only the assessed value, only counts as non-TIF areas. But one of the things they have to understand, I think, is that assessed value is what really is driving their price up, not the actual property tax rate. So we can say it till we're blue in the face, right? And we tried, but they're still going to see a higher bill probably just simply because of assessment.
Why is it called GEO, first of all?
It's a general obligation bond.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just, we've done some bonds in the past and the terminology just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But that extra 5 cents then is not going to be that noticeable from a taxpayer standpoint, but it would allow us not to have to do this huge water rate increase, right? Is that
Correct.
kind of where we're going with
Yeah.
it?
Well, and that's why Karen put this spreadsheet together. I think it's very cleverly shows you that the people who actually save by doing this are the people who are full-time residents who are water usage, right? And probably in our lower assessed value range. Would that be a fair statement, Karen? And the people who might notice it are going to be our higher property values, higher assessed values, and they're going to probably see it more in the property tax, but it's almost like a scratch in a lot of different ways.
So like, if you look at this spreadsheet in front of you, if you look at the column all the way to the right, that shows, well, let me explain first. So what I did with this spreadsheet was I tried to find a variety of home values, part-time residents, full-time residents, different ranges of assessed value. I took the 2021 assessed value and then the 2024 assessed value. So you can see how much just the property values have increased, number one. So then showed what basically their property tax bill for the town is. And that's only one portion of their property tax bill. But that second basically set of columns, the 2024 assessed value, the 2025 rate is assigned to that 2024 assessed value. So the first column would be the tax bill at the current rate if we did nothing.
Mhm.
The second column is with the general obligation bond, so that increases that tax rate by 5 cents. So you can see kind of the difference in everyone's bill. And so then you can see the different, that last column is, basically the increase. So then what I extended it out, and then because I knew who these people were, I went and looked up their water usage and took the first 8 months of the year, because that's the information that we have, took that as a monthly average, and then figured out what that bill would be for the year, and then figured out what that bill would be with the increased water rates that Baker Tilly had proposed. So that's the third group of columns, and then you can see the difference. And so that last column at the end, you can see what the difference between the increase in the tax rate is versus the increase in the water usage.
The GEO bond makes a lot better sense for anyone whose house is 212,000 and lower. Really,
Yeah.
they save quite a bit. Like they'd want the GEO bond. How does it affect 2026, 2027 and on?
That 5 cents will stay. Well, basically there will be an additional tax rate solely for debt service for the next 10 years.
Okay.
So, and that will go up and down depending. We'll need
Depending on our
about
assessed
$150,000 for that, to pay that to bond off
Okay.
each for the next 10 years. So whatever that, if the assessed value continues to go up, that number is going to go down, but we're still going to hit that $150.
And then beyond the 10 years, it still stays.
No.
right? Or it would
Beyond
come off?
once it is paid off, then that
Right.
tax rate would drop off.
Okay.
Or, there are some cities and towns that just perpetuate, just continue that GEO bond just so they're collecting because they can't get additional revenue off of their maximum levy.
So that makes even more sense, because if ideally you took it off, this first column of increases are a 10-year deal, where if we raise the rates, they're gonna stay. If anything, we'll raise them again in 10 years.
I mean, I think we're still gonna need to raise the water rates
Mhm.
to some degree, but it won't be that large amount that
That
was.
27 or
Well,
32.
and in speaking with Karen and talking about going back to Baker Tilly, two things we didn't account for. Number one, we didn't bring the dunes into that study because we had yet to approve it. So this study will be able to capture at least an estimated income with the build out schedule. We can give them the build out schedule. They can project that income into the study.
Okay.
The second thing that I think is fair, that if the intended use of the GEO bond would be to pay for the water plant improvements that are necessary. And those are coming in at roughly, and I mean, talking with Bob, let's say 610, somewhere in there for the water plant. That's with a 10% contingency. We're pretty confident with that number.
Mhm.
The second number would be the meters number. So we would be in somewhere, let's say about 1.1 million and some change somewhere in there. We have some flexibility in there. But that would give us 100,000 for the issuance cost and we're good to go, right? We would bring it in at 1.2 million. One of the things that we're thinking about is getting that online and capturing that dunes and bringing it into the study. But if we can use this GEO bond for that, we can relieve two line items that were in the last study with the rate. We can relieve the projected water plant improvements, and we can also remove close to 250, I think was in there.
Yeah.
250 for the meters. And we can get the meters up front and install them over time.
Now, when they said you could go as high as 1.8, it is the conversation you're having at the 1.2 because
It is.
that's the nickel.
Because that's.
It would be even more if it's 1.8.
It would be more if it was 1.8, but basically
Okay.
we're looking at that as, that's the need right now.
Is what, Karen?
The need
Yeah,
is the 1.2. We don't want to, necessarily bond more than what we need and,
well, do we have anything coming in the future beside, the water plant improvements and the
If
meters?
yeah, we do. And that's one of the other considerations. I think that we have the fire truck. And so putting the GEO bond into play gives Karen back some flexibility within the general fair statement. Yeah. And also with the redevelopment commission, both of those have a greater flexibility to be able to move around and pay for things. Whereas this dedicated money for the water, because you would have to try to find, one of the issues we have is we would have to turn to the water fund. One of the reasons why we were trying to build the water fund up and raise rates in the first place is because the state's telling us that we don't have enough money in there. We cannot generate that kind of water fund money to be able to direct it towards, we would have to turn to redevelopment or somebody.
Well,
This is just
We had enough money, but it was in the low end.
it's on the low end, yeah.
okay, let me just ask this question, because the general obligation is based upon property taxes
Correct.
versus the revenue bond.
Mhm.
So what if we, and like Jenny mentioned, I mean, we're talking 1.2, which is the improvements and the meters.
Mhm.
But we've got this fire truck coming along. How much, if we went above 1.2 million, how much of a chunk of that fire truck could we take?
Well,
There's a couple things that, in consideration of that. The first thing is, if you went ahead and borrowed money beyond the 1.2, you're gonna start seeing an increase in the property tax that's gonna take note. Okay, so there is a public element to this, and that we're trying to be responsible to that public, and I know you're not suggesting not being it, I don't mean that, but keeping it there. I think the second thing is to consider is with the interest rates and where we're at. Do we want to borrow that money? If we can borrow that money or just use this GEO bond to free up funding, to redirect it towards, and then we don't have the interest bearing. But then again, Karen has I'm going to defer, sorry, I'm handing the ball off. You have the command of the budget that I don't,
Yeah.
so.
well, and the other thing is in talking, we are under there is a very limited timeframe. So we talked on Friday and I had to have the budget notice. I mean, I had my budget notice out already, but that budget notice had to be finalized. If I was going to make any changes, it had to be done by Monday.
Right.
And so I was able to do that Friday. Thankfully, we talked because I had to do what you
Yeah.
just did. So I had to get that out. So it is advertised at that $150,000. So we
Okay.
can't make any changes now.
And it was literally had to reopen. It took some
It
time on
was-
Karen's part over the weekend to get it redone kind of
Yeah.
thing. So, yeah, we're kind of locked and loaded at this number, but it's a responsible number. It really does free up extra monies elsewhere to
And
be applied towards projects.
it doesn't increase that tax rate.
Yeah.
It keeps it steady, so.
My understanding from what Baker Tilly was saying is you don't have to jump through as many hoops when it comes to.
That's it.
uh, Hearings and that kind of stuff in
Yeah, I
order to
think-
make the change and do that.
There was an option to go up to like 3 million something.
Yeah,
Then it would be a referendum, a
Yeah.
bunch of other
Right.
things. The recommendation was to go take this before the Indiana Bond Bank and go through them for the bonding, and they had already Kyle had just gone before them
Yep.
and got a interest rate that was lower than what the Fed rate is right now,
A
so.
secondary consideration too, at 1.2, this thing eases through in terms of explanation. One of the things that the state may ask is why aren't you using your water fund? Why aren't you bonding it through the water fund? At 1.2, it's not a big deal. As you increase that amount, they're going to be asking that question more and more with a little bit more stringency in terms of how you answer it. 1.2 with the value, the assessed value that we have is a pretty easy
But
one.
can't you also be like, because this saves our taxpayers money to do it this way?
Well, and they
Yeah.
care so much. Well,
Yeah.
Okay, but if you did the through, like you were talking about the water fund, then that's not a general obligation. That becomes a revenue bond. And the revenue bond carries a higher rate of interest than what the general obligation does.
And hence why we're not.
Raising water
Yeah.
rates
Yeah,
significantly.
Yep.
yeah.
Now and there's another excellent reason why we're going this path, right?
It
So-
made sense to me Friday and
Well,
Well,
once you
she's
raise
talking
the
about-
rates, they never come back down. I mean, the amount of money the front end of this chart saves annually, that's pretty
well,
significant.
really,
True.
it
Yeah.
doesn't cost, the cost is either a savings or within $45
Yeah.
Mhm.
for the year if you have a home that's valued under 350,000.
The funny thing too is I think there has to be a consideration of perception of how people perceive expense. And people are, even though the impact may even be greater at the end of the year on the property tax side, that monthly bill hitting you in the face with the repetition is going to be felt harder, even if it were less to increase their water, right?
Yeah,
They're not going to notice it as much as the property tax rate. At the end, you look at the bill, half the time it's in where escrow, right? And it's just set. And your payment may go up or may not go up on your house payment. This is going to hit you in the face every month as a reminder of the increase. Not that we can't not increase
We're
it, right?
still gonna
We
be.
still have to increase it, but not quite as much. It's going to hit them in the nose every time they open their bill.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know, because we were at like $5 and some odd cents for sewer. Yeah, you can get your head around that quite easily. Same if you had to do it on water as well.
And really, I hate to play this comparison game, but going to the mayor's meeting and just sitting with Freeman and Argus last week at the Reese Theater, those guys are sweating bullets. The increase of Bremen's sewer, oh my goodness. And Argus has just hit it and they're still getting hit in the gut a little bit on that increase. So we win by comparison. That's what I'm saying. Maybe, right? We're not
I'm
quite.
so bummed out for those two communities.
what, didn't Bremen take out something like a
$23 million bond because of
22,
their,
but
yeah, 22 or
23.
23, yeah.
yeah,
For what?
for water and
Water
sewer,
treatment.
water treatment.
Whoops. They kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. And the increase, I talked to Keith, they kept putting the increase off. They knew they had to, but 20 years later, they're now sitting on top. There you have it.
I mean, we want to do 1.2 million. That's a far cry from 22 million.
Far cry from 10 million.
But
Yeah.
there's stuff coming too.
We do have-
Yeah, we've got stuff coming. We're not totally.
And to Bill's original question, the wastewater fund, the wastewater improvements, we had a good talk with Midwestern as we went, Bob and I went through the plan. And there are some things that we might actually be able to bypass. The engineering is old. For example, the primaries, the one that haven't worked, they said, why do you even need primaries? And I went, talk more. And so there's some things that Bob and I have Midwestern looking at to become more efficient that might actually save us money. Now, inevitably, things are new and everything, but we have the $1 million sitting in the sewer fund that we feel pretty confident about being able to take care of the plant with primarily through that, right? And then that fund is regenerating at a healthy rate. It's the water fund we really got to relieve for a while in order to increase those rates slightly so we can start building for development projects.
I do think that, once we get over this hurdle and the initial increase, we need to continue to do, an increase every 1 to 2 years at least.
Agreed.
Because otherwise you get so far behind it, it's
It's a cost of living.
it's almost like strangles the people when they see the bill.
Bob informs me too, that 10 years down the line, 8 to 10 years, we might be looking at building a new plant for the water across the street. So
This begs the question about when are we gonna build a new town hall?
we're gonna hold that for now. Is that okay?
I know, we said that 10 years ago.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
it's the same. Well, that's great.
And I love you
What's the
guys.
perception though? I mean, because we've had this question asked to us, we're supporting emergency services. We got fire, EMS, police, we got water and sewer. If we want to continue to be responsible with our funding, the optics of it are horrible. Like, well, we're gonna increase, we're gonna
Always
jack up your
horrible.
rates to, we still need to support all those and we're gonna build ourselves a new town hall. So I struggle with that.
No, I
Obviously,
just
there's-
agree with you. We struggled with it 17, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
My first year on council, this was
Yeah.
a topic.
And there'll
This
be,
place looked exactly like this 17, 18 years ago.
Yeah.
It's been painted once since.
Yeah.
The
I mean, I think
bathroom
we
is
can-
not.
It was,
well, one of the questions, honestly, one of the questions is, do we need more space or a redesign of the space?
Yeah, we went through that very question. We had 3
Right.
different options drawn up,
And
but they were all drawn up for this property. So one was like the dream version after the architect met with the department heads. There was also the bare bones version, and then there was one in the middle. And I think the bare bones ones was right around $1 million, which was a basic renovation of where we're at. The middle one was expanding some space for the police and EMS and some storage and some things like that. And this was even before they put those bedrooms in.
Yeah, because
Over
they
here.
were talking about going up.
Going
Yeah, it
up.
was gonna be a second floor. And then the dream
I
version was
actually have the
the
plans
best of it all.
at the office. They're
Yeah.
tear soaked.
Well, the architect was ironically killed about a year later in a car wreck or. So, but that was, I think, that was
It was
maybe my
close.
second term. It was
Yeah, I
a
think it was your second
discussion
term
and the
because I was
first,
here.
my first term, it was sort of a hot topic, my first term, and it just sizzled.
It's just hard to justify.
The optics
when-
are never good, right?
Yeah, I mean, when, obviously, we want to make sure that we have good emergency services, because if we don't,
Well, you don't need
what
a
are we here
building
for?
if you don't have the service.
Right.
True.
Yeah, we're feeling like, I think we're in a good place with the leadership there and some of the
Oh, yeah.
direction, but it's always a challenge. I mean, Mike and I sat and talked about that just last week, right? And it's difficult, but he's learning it. He's doing the best he can. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm
Nice.
only posing the question because even in our 2014 comp plan, it was the town needs a new town hall.
Yep.
It wasn't really discussed heavily with the current comp plan. I don't feel like 10 years later, it wasn't a big hot topic of, but
There are some properties too that I have inquiry, like I would like to follow up on that could be contenders. Right? if things don't work out or whatever, but yeah, for now, the priorities kind of for me are the wastewater and the water, I think, talking with Bob and then the meters, because the state has also addressed with us the need to start capturing some of that loss and billing. We also, inside of this, we've also included, Bob, with the estimate for the meters, included the software that makes the billing so much easier. First of all, it has leak detection software that's going to help us and save.
Is that the one we
for
looked
loss.
at a year and a half,
I
2
think
years?
I
ago?
think it is, yeah, because Bob had mentioned, it's well worth it. It's gonna bring an ease to not an ease, but an efficiency to the billing process. I think that will be.
Yeah, being able to see a leaking toilet 30 days ahead of the 30-day bill you get.
And the residents can also.
Yep.
I think they're able to check.
I think
That's huge with our
it
clients.
I think it actually can text them and let them know, and especially with our part-time residency. So, yes, we increased some rates here and there, but you're also getting better service, right? And that's the key message. Oh,
Yeah, it's nice to know if somebody turned your outside spigot on while you were gone
yeah.
and it's flowing down the street, or flowing into the yard, and nobody's noticed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of those leaking toilets too, you don't even realize you
Oh.
have a leak.
Yeah.
With the
We've had that.
definitely, yeah. The one thing that with the water plant that we had considered is that the improvements are necessary from a lot of different standpoints as we bring on a new development is part of it. It's certainly is part of it, with the dunes coming on. But really, honestly, we've been sitting on a 580, gallon capacity filter. And we can only feed it at 350 because the aerators are 21 years old. It wasn't designed for that. Our pumps are over 70 years old. The service pumps from the aerators aren't high volume. So what we're doing is actually just making the plant as efficient as it should be, right?
Mhm.
Given the filter capacity. And Bob had the foresight. I mean, give a lot of credit to Bob. He had the foresight when he put in the new filter system and the media to make that at 580, anticipating growth. Right, because if he wouldn't have done that, we'd be sitting in a whole different position right now. So massive props to Bob on that one. But at the same time, he didn't want to over engineer things until he had a need. The need has come, but the whole town's going to
So
benefit.
here's a quick question. I think the last income survey we did is still good. And we're past the 5-year window on the water plant. So technically, we could go in. The deadlines are ridiculous at this point, but technically we could go in for an Okra grant on the water plant.
Doing what's,
While that income survey is still good, because it probably expires next year.
The 21, I think.
And Karen provided, it was 2021, so it's next
Yeah,
year.
It's gonna expire next year.
The problem,
We
Bob,
wouldn't be able to go in until the spring round though. It's
Yeah,
too
yeah.
late for this round.
that's it. And Bob and I had already discussed that possibility. And really, honestly, some of this is that we got hit late by the state with the testing from IDEM
Mhm.
about our capacities. Quite frankly, it's like using Revelation Day to judge your efficiency, but that's what happened. We had the Davis Street leak. I mean, the 5 days they picked, it might as well been, but it is what it is. But there is a need for this, right? And as we
Do they
continue,
put us on a deadline for having it repaired?
pardon me,
Do they have us on a deadline for the repair?
who's they?
The state?
No,
Okay.
with the meters, no. Well, the meters are more of a pressing issue from the state. The state has made recommendations, but really honestly, with the plant, they really want, I mean, as we bring on well C, the problem is we've got well C coming in at 600, which we need to retest, by the way, which I'll talk to you about on Thursday. We'll get into that. But we're coming out of well C at 600 and we can only bring it to the filter at 350. Well B, after we cleaned it and everything, is now at almost 600 again. So we're sitting on top of water that we
We
can't
use.
and every time we have a Davis Street leak or something, we're pumping that thing out so fast that it causes a shutdown, right? We can't store it in the water tower because of the freezing issues and whatnot. So this is the most efficient solution to it, really. And there is a absolute need for it right next to the wastewater.
So maybe right now we do the geo bond for the meters and the upgrades.
Mhm.
And then we look at potentially next year, if he has another project there or something that he knows we've got to do soon, we could do a spring round Okra grant. Because we're not gonna have another shot at it. We won't get past an income survey, I don't think. And
I would agree.
you have to
with that.
go, you can only go every 5 years on an Okra grant for utility. We're well past the 5-year mark and we still have the income survey. So if he wants to do even more to that plant beyond this set of projects, we might want to go for it while we can. And maybe that's what the rate pays for.
Yeah, we could, I mean, there's no reason.
Cause you
not
can
to.
get like, I think up to 750,000 on a Okra for utility project.
Well, you can't because Francisville, where else? Was it Hamlet or Francis? It's Francisville and Hamlet maybe also scored on the Okra. They were just informed that they were going to go for it before it was dropped in our lap. So we didn't have any chance. And there's always, it's a double-edged
Yeah.
sword too, right?
Yeah.
But
Well, with the Okra grant, you have, so the first deadline coming up is in October. You have to have your proposal done by like October 20th. And then the full application's due December 20th. So I mean, Shannon would have to be doing environmental 2 months ago for us to go for it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm thinking if we were thinking about potentially next year, while that income survey is good, we'd want to start talking to Shannon now.
we would, and it's a lot of frequency because Shannon's frequency right now is on the finishing the ready. So there's only so much frequency that we get of hers. You know that, but
Mhm.
definitely.
Karen, I have a question that's confusing me.
Mhm.
Your last column,
Yeah.
where you've got the difference between the tax rate increase and the water rate. Okay, I can see where the water difference in the column to the left, I can see where that comes from. Where do you,
If you take the difference between estimated 2025 tax rate.
Yeah.
The sixth column from the left,
yeah,
you take that column minus the water difference, will get you the difference between the two, between the increase in the tax rate and the increase in the water.
Yeah.
okay, all right, okay.
Basically, if you're in a home that has a lower assessed value, you don't use a ton of water, which is probably more of our senior citizen population,
Mhm.
you're gonna benefit by having that property tax increase. Rather than the
Yeah.
water increase.
Yeah.
If you're in a higher end home, but you don't use as much water because you're not here all the time, you would benefit more from that water increase rather than the property tax increase.
Mhm.
So
That's benefiting more the full-time resident versus.
it would be that older, those that own homes that are a little less expensive, that aren't
Realistically,
as high.
the senior citizens on fixed incomes are the ones that are probably feel the hurt more.
Yeah, and I probably misspoke a little bit because they're probably using water. It'd be those, if they're not using a whole lot of water, it's going to kind of be a wash, but.
Yeah.
Yeah. No matter what, a full-time resident's gonna use more than a part-time resident.
Well, yeah,
Right.
that's the story.
Unless you have 30 people show up at your house and they all take long showers.
So we're assuming the guy at the 189,001, we're assuming that's probably a part-time resident. His water usage is 687 a month. Am I reading that incorrectly?
Which the Are you looking at the very bottom one or?
No, I'm looking at the,
Oh, right here, second down on average monthly water use, 687.50. Is that right, Bill? Second one down?
yeah,
Yeah, right here. So we're assuming, what was your question?
well, is that probably a part-time resident?
No, that looks probably with the assessed value of that property. I'm gonna go with probably a full-time resident who's not, is in a single household. Maybe.
Yeah.
Looking at an assessed value of 98,900. That's pretty low assessed value and.
Well, that was the assessed value though, and
189,000.
yeah, but,
Yeah, it's now, sorry,
yeah.
but that's still pretty cheap in Culver,
I
right?
did very well at forgetting who was who on here, so.
Bill, it's
Well,
actually you.
I'm not trying to find out,
No.
I'm not trying to find
Yeah,
out
no.
who's who, but, I mean, I'm looking, this one guy's got 7,000. And he's living in a $250,000,
Mhm.
that's a lot of water.
Yeah. It must be water.
Probably a big,
It might be a family.
could be a
Yeah.
family or it
Yeah.
could be somebody that waters their lawn and their flower beds and doesn't have a sprinkle meter.
That's right.
Could be a guy with a daughter who's home all summer, just saying. Trust me when I tell you.
Like slime showers.
Baths.
So where do we go from here?
We are going to, this is informational. We will bring it before the council for a vote Thursday night to begin on October, 1st of October.
You have the public hearing on the annual budget
Mhm.
on Thursday night.
Right,
And then you have the first reading of the budget. And this tax rate is included in that budget that we're having for the public hearing.
Okay.
on. So we wanted to get this information to you now and not spring it on you on Thursday night.
right.
And then that way, if you have questions, we can get your
This is
questions
in the
answered.
published
It
document.
is in the published, yes,
Okay.
because that had to be out a week ago.
Yes.
So then going forward, we're gonna have, once you'll have the first, second, and third reading will be October 10th of the budget. And then starting in October, we'll start having, we'll have to have the.
I bring the first vote
But-
for the bond.
You'll be
We'll
back
bring
by
the
10th.
bond to you the first meeting of October. So you'll already be on probably second, third reading of the budget. It should be done. We'll hit you with the first reading of the bond, the first meeting of October. If we get a unanimous vote, we can clean it up at the end of October with the second, third. If we do not get a unanimous vote, we'll have to carry it into the first week of November. We have to have this back to them by November 20th or 24th, 26th, 20 somewhere in there.
After that first meeting.
There you go. But we've scheduled this so we can go 3 readings and there's no issues. So if it needs 3 readings, we're fine. It's at the council's pleasure. If it gets terminated, we'll look elsewhere. But that's where we're at. And so we'll bring it to you the first meeting of October specifically for the bond, but the budget obviously will come before that. But apart from that, that's it. And Phil Facenda's already working a time schedule. And Baker Tilly's doing the logistics. So we'll be able to provide those for you. Anything I'm missing?
What do you anticipate the public reaction is going to be?
Okay, so I think for the most part, the public reaction is fickle, right? We know that, but I think it's fair. The public reaction is going to, first of all, see the association with the dunes in this project. There is a connection. There is a correlation. Part of the reasons we're bringing this on is because we're growing. It would be a lie to suggest otherwise, but this is necessary improvements for the water plant for the next 10 years. It just simply is. We have an inefficient water plant. The numbers support that. The Midwestern study supports that. I think what we need to make sure that, let me rephrase that because it almost sounds demanding. I think what's interesting is when we do the Baker Tilly study, factoring in the dunes, I think the public will realize that the dunes coming online is actually holding their water rates down. because we know what the water rates were before we factored the dunes in. We're gonna bring the dunes income into this next study, and what you're gonna see is the difference there of what Baker Tilly suggests the rates. Fair comment? So it's the dunes is actually holding back the need to increase the water rates to a full amount. I think the second thing that the town needs to realize in terms of perception for those who want to say, well, this water plant simply because of the dunes. If you look at the income it will generate for our redevelopment, which may be directed outside the water plant, but still is income for redevelopment, as well as the water income and sewer income off of this the 300 units, it will pay for these improvements once we get it online by the year 2030. Just the income alone. I think Marty mentioned that it was 130 something in terms of water alone, and that's without turning a single faucet on. So this will, I may be exaggerating, but we will gain the income necessary to pay for these improvements.
The one thing, that would be useful to go along with this is a breakdown of where the 1.2 is gonna go. From a public standpoint of, well, what is it paying for exactly? Just break it out for us.
I will absolutely. So I have the
And
estimate.
I'm guessing some of that is the cost of bonding.
Yes.
Is rolled into that number. But yeah, send us the breakdown of it, so we know how to answer that.
So Thursday night, I'll be bringing Midwestern study I'll be asking permission for Midwestern to begin the engineering for the water plant improvement.
I think one thing that would be really nice to have with Baker Tilly is showing what a positive, I mean, we're gonna get more water revenue out of the dunes than if we didn't have the dunes.
Mhm.
But how that relates to what we might have to raise the rates. In other words, the dunes is going to reduce the need
And
for the rates.
that's what Karen has included the dunes in this next rate study.
I will be doing that.
Yeah.
There have been so many moving parts in the last 3 months that every time I start to reach out to Baker Tilly, something else changes.
Mhm.
And so it stops, well, we're gonna wait until let's wait until, on and on. Jeff and I had a conversation the other day and I kind of told him what was going on. I think when Marty put out the estimated increase in revenue and you commented about just without turning on faucets, basically we charge $16.64 per month to a household, and that's the base rate. So you take that times 400 or
300 units.
300 units, and that's gonna tell you how much revenue we're gonna get just from, the dunes.
So it takes 16 times 300,
Yeah, just,
and that's monthly.
that's monthly.
And you're on top of 60,000 right there without turning a faucet on. But that's just water.
That is just water, yeah.
Yeah, there's also the sewer charge.
That's exactly.
Yeah, but they're two different funds, and so you have to look at it,
Yeah.
Differently. So that at least gives you an idea of once those are all online at the current rate, that's what
Mhm.
that's gonna, that's the income that's gonna generate.
And the key, and I don't mean this in a crass way. And the public, I think we all know this, but I think that there's already preconceived positions within our public that we simply cannot move with data, right?
We cannot what?
We can't move their thinking by making an argument. There's preconceived positions about this that are formed very really from their own perspective, and they're not looking to be moved or argued with. They're fixed, right? But I think using the data and using the evidence before us to make the decision is the best we can do. And hopefully in 10 years, they'll understand why that decision was made. I understand I understand the reservation on the perspective of the water plant, but everything tells us we need this. We have well C coming online. We have a filter capacity that's way larger than what we can pump into it. And we have infrastructure in it that's aging. that that we shouldn't wait around to fail. And I have a great deal of faith in Midwestern and Bob. And those are the two guys guiding this. And they both have given me the nod and said, this is needed. To me, that's probably more compelling than anything. And the public will stand where the public stands.
Well, you know, it's like you said that Bob had talked about probability of a new plant down the road. You know, it's like you said, it's all moving parts. I
Mhm.
mean, they built it in 51, they remodeled it in the
Yep.
70s, they remodeled it again. About every 20 years, you've got to do major updates,
Mhm.
or you fall so far behind that it craters on you.
Yep.
Or
Good
you
way of saying it.
build
Yeah.
a new one.
You end up in Bremen's situation.
Yeah, right.
So I think it's just the responsible decision. It also keeps us more mobile elsewhere in terms of funding. I think that's a conversation that I gleaned from Karen, right? And or at least an understanding. So yeah,
Honestly, at the end of the day, and we're like, most of us are in this room are elected officials. And our task is to leave Culver better when we leave than when we started. And I think we all have that in mind. I think we all have what's best for Culver in mind. And we are all also taxpayers and water ratepayers. So what the decisions that we make also affect us as well. And I think at the end of the day.
Yeah,
we're trying to
honestly,
do
I'm on
what's
the wrong
best.
part of the chart. But I like what it does for several of my,
come on down to my end of the church. No, I'm kidding.
but I mean, it does. In the long term, if it saves people the dollars, long term, it makes sense to me. And in the short term, it's making us more liquid, it sounds like, so that we can afford to do other things without increasing rates. You know, a fire truck's a really expensive thing to do, as is an ambulance and everything else that we end up
Yeah.
paying for. And I don't think the county is gonna do anything to help that situation. They're already taking grief for the $500,000 they're talking about setting aside for some sort of grant fund for emergency services.
Before we break out, is there a date that works for council to do? I've sent you the candidates for the park superintendent job.
I'm gone from next Monday through October 6th. Sally's gone till the 10th.
No, I don't get back till, I won't be lucid until 14th.
So,
Because by the time you fly that far
Yeah,
and I'll be honest, I trust
and the time zone
I
change.
trust you guys, I trust the council to do the interviews and make a recommendation. I also think we ought to keep in mind that if we don't have the right candidate among the 4 or 5 that we want to interview, so be it, we're going into the winter season, we can take our time about it if we have to.
I would agree with that. And there's another discussion, and we would like council's opinion on that. And Karen and I have had discussions that we don't that if a candidate doesn't appeal to you as a council, there's other solutions to this too. Maybe it's time to reconsider, right? How this job or how this operates, right? And that's another conversation that could happen. For the time being, we're really thankful to Crystal. She's done a real wonderful job of maintenance day in and day out. And has done an excellent job of maintaining it. So there's not a hurry. That's an excellent point, but we would like to get these candidates so we could get opinion on how to move forward more than anything, right?
Mhm.
And if one does stick out, that would be good to know too. So how do we want to email? What did we say? You're leaving, Sally?
I'm leaving the 2nd. And I won't be back until, I mean, my flight gets in like at 9 p.m.
Physically, you're back at 9 p.m., but
Physically-
mentally, you're checking in about 4 days later.
Well, mentally, I'll be here the following day, but I will need, by the time I drive back to
I
Indiana,
got you.
Hmm.
I got you.
it'll be 2:00 in the morning when I get here.
Yeah, you don't.
So, yeah, I mean, the 14th would be the absolute earliest that I
Yeah.
would want.
Yeah, I wouldn't wouldn't want to salary before that.
And even though I get back October 6th, but AIM is that week.
I
Yeah,
was gonna
same.
say-
You guys are probably both at
Same.
AIM.
Yeah. So that week.
So, I mean, if you want to push into mid-October, I don't see a problem with it. I know these people are waiting, but.
Well, and do I have permission to update them?
Yeah.
I can update them, letting
Yeah,
them
you
know.
could say we intend to interview you, but we have council members on vacation. and
Okay,
a
maybe
lot.
that will be enough. I'll email the candidates, letting them know that we're interested in interviewing them, to be determined, TBD, basically.
Yeah.
And
Kids, you don't want-
these four are the ones that goes to the town.
Yeah, these are the four that I think Karen and I both had conversations about, and there was a couple, but we really feel like these are the four that, and we weren't sorting them out. There were just things that would really anticipate, like in an anticipation of not being able to come in for an interview. So these are the four that we're.
So Jenny and Sally are both gonna be gone.
I'll be here for the first October meeting.
First October.
I get
meeting.
back the 6th.
You get back to 6, okay.
I would say the week of the 14th. I mean, if you got availabilities from them, the week of the 14th.
You want me to
Yeah.
check in on that?
I mean, yeah, you could do that, and then that way, we can, if we find a night that most of them are available, or they all just say, yeah, we're good that week.
Yep.
Then we can go ahead and set
Okay. Okay. Yep, I'll
something.
pose that
I mean, that's
question.
gonna be.
Dana, you're gonna be around?
MPO is that week too.
I'll be gone some in December.
No.
The week of the 21st is actually better for me. There's an MPO conference the week of the 14th. But you're probably, are you going to the MPO?
Well, I'm okay with that.
You go to that?
Um,
Oh, come on.
Yeah. One last order of business before you can do what you want, Mr. President, but tomorrow I'm gonna be calling, struggling with this a little bit. Right, Wayne, I know you're calling. Struggling a little bit, but working with Tim on this new contract for Pier Socket B. One of the things that came back was he came back with an increase in his estimate for labor. That increase is justified to the sense that he has to put them in the spring, fall. He has to remove everything, then remove the pier sockets out, then start installing the new pier sockets. As he does that, he has to put into the pier itself, and then he has to take it out for the winter. Which I kind of felt like he had to start in the fall to get it done. Once I saw the labor estimate, it's quite a bit higher than what was anticipated, over double. And I don't know where that is justified. He can't do it in the spring because of his commitments to his other clients, plus the work that we have. So I'm going to make the phone call this week. It's just, I don't think it's efficient or feasible to do it at the labor cost that was projected. I think what we can do is we'll include the pier socket for B as well as for A, as well as the convenience pier and the fishing pier in the next RFP for the 3-year contract for the park. So we'll just include everything into one contract, put the stipulations down. That way they're clear, and then have that bid. And
So whoever bids on it.
whoever
has to
bids
do
on
in
it
the spring.
wins it, and we'll remove the piers in the fall, as that's kind of the standard practice, and we'll award the new contract in the spring and have everybody bid on it. I was just going to make that phone call. We're not under any contractual obligation at the time. Nothing that Tim's done. It's just, like he said, it's not something, he's right. There is way more labor involved. It's just, I think being responsible with the money, it might just be cost prohibitive. So I'll have that conversation tomorrow. I'll update the council on Thursday how that went. But I just wanted to inform you before I made that phone call.
There's
Yeah,
no
I'll
one
be
online.
virtual on
Karen, is there?
Thursday.
Hmm.
I'll be virtual on Thursdays.
Okay.
Karen's got me set up.
Okay, I think we've